Take us back to that day, if you will. Where were you when it happened? What was your immediate reaction?
Well, I was in my office preparing to go to New York City, and someone came in. It was very early in the morning, and told me that it appeared a prop jet or some small plane had lost its way and hit one of the World Trade Center towers. Obviously, within a short time after that, we understood that it was a big plane and it was a deliberate attack. And I never made it to New York that day. I had to defer my trip one day while we dealt with the chaos that was created by the attack.
So talk about that chaos for a moment, if you would, because obviously we lost power throughout southern Manhattan. A lot of the markets went down, and there was a lot of concern about the payment system, for example.
Yeah, the problem was that the damage that was done was quite extensive. My big concern was figuring out how extensive the damage was and what the protocols should be for getting the markets back into a normal state. We immediately decided to shut down the securities markets. I did that in tandem with Dick Grasso, who was then the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange and who became my constant telephone buddy throughout the week that we had to deal with the wreckage that was caused by the attack.
How could you get information in those first hours? Because I was running ABC News at the time, and one of the problems was we just couldn't get information out of anywhere.
We gathered information by talking. I talked directly to the heads of all the major firms. After we decided to shut everything down for the rest of the day, it was clear to me I had to go to New York City. And so I took a cadre of senior staff officials at the SEC, along with Treasury officials, and made plans to have the heads of all of the brokerage firms, not their delegates, but the heads personally, sit down with us in a meeting and try to figure out exactly what the damage was, exactly what kinds of issues had been raised, and also to hear from the New York mayors and New York governor's emergency divisions to find out about recovering people who had been lost in the wreckage.
One of the issues, obviously, when you shut down a market is it really shakes the market to its core. And then when you bring it back up, you worry about whether there'll be the confidence. And by the way, as much the liquidity there. What did you do to make sure that you could reopen these markets when you could reopen them and not have them go chaotic on you?
Yeah, one of the concerns we had was getting an accurate picture. At a time like this, there's understandably a fair amount of bravado. And that's why when we went to New York the very next morning, in addition to meeting with the heads of the firms and the heads of the then American Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, and NASDAQ, we had people from Verizon and Consolidated Edison come in and brief us. There is no way to make sensible decisions without having a full portfolio of information on what the damage was. And what we learned was that pretty much 85% of the electronic communications had been disrupted, so that it became very, very difficult to foresee a prompt and immediate restoration of service. Instead, what we did was try to figure out all of the nuances and issues that would arise. And we met every day, usually twice a day, and we briefed the public every afternoon so that people were up to date on what our plans were. And finally, we decided we were pretty sure we could have the markets reopen on a Friday, or we could wait till the following Monday. I made the decision that we should wait till the following Monday because of my concern that if the markets tanked after we reopened them, we would never get confidence back. So it was crucial from our perspective that once the markets reopened, they remained reopened. And that's why we used the weekend to test, if you will, faux orders that weren't real, but that would test the electronics, the communications, and the like. And we got very good results. We found where all the kinks were in the system. And when the system reopened that Monday, we had record volume and there wasn't a single lost transaction, which was pretty incredible on the parts of all of the people who were working to make that a reality.
What was the volatility like? Was there a lot of gapping, for example?
I'm sorry?
What was the volatility like when you opened up on the 17th, I think was the day of that Monday?
Yeah, it was, the markets were clearly having been shut down for 6 days, which I think was the longest shutdown in history, certainly at least since World War II. The volatility was large. There was a huge influx of sell orders. People have been holding off on that. At the end of the day, there were certainly a lot of losses in particular securities. But the most important thing was that the markets functioned as they were meant to function. People's transactions were fulfilled and recorded, and we didn't lose a single trade.
What did we learn from that? Have we changed some of the ways we structure the markets, our infrastructure, so that we'd be more resilient now if it happened again, heaven forfend?
We learned a great deal, I think. And one of the principal things that the Commission and also the Federal Reserve did together was we created a task force of senior staff people to prepare a report on lessons learned. This was not a report trying to point fingers at anybody or blame anyone, but rather it was a report that was designed to say, here are all the things that we were able to accomplish. Here are the lessons we've learned on how to minimize some of the problems we saw. And among those in particular was the lack of duplicative systems. One of the issues is that the New York Stock Exchange, for example, had created a duplicate system, but it was very close to where the original system was. So that if somebody were eager to take out the New York Stock Exchange again, right, they wouldn't have to go very far to take out its backup facilities. Yeah. We changed all of that and made certain that right, they did things differently going forward.